100 years ago, just outside this iconic building, events occurred that had political, military, social and cultural significance. These events, many would agree, gave birth to the Irish nation. The War of Independence and the Civil War that followed shaped the nation that we have today. It's important that we acknowledge that Travers played an integral part in all of these events. But yet when one reads the literature and when we hear historians speaking about these events, our community is completely invisible and excluded. The recording of Irish history is both inaccurate and incomplete. Somebody once said that history is about people who own the mines and never about people who work down them. Irish history is not the preserve of the majority population, academics or the elite. Irish history belongs to us all. While travellers and members of the majority population inevitably have a shared history and experience on this island, it is also important to acknowledge that my community have a distinct history and experience which is inextricably linked to our identity as Minceirs, and this needs to be validated and acknowledged by the state. The ideals contained in the Proclamation, such as equal rights for all, have not been realised for travellers and indeed for many others. In 1915, Corrick Pearse, at the funeral of Jeremiah O'Donovan Rossa, said, "Ireland unfree shall never be at peace." Minceirs Whiden is saying here today that travellers unfree from racism, persecution and human rights abuses means that the Irish Republic that was envisioned by the Proclamation, for which many men and women fought and died for, will never be fully achieved. Manifestations of this racism can be seen in the poor outcomes in travellers' health, travellers' education, travellers' accommodation and travellers' employment. And just to illustrate some stark statistics, in terms of travellers' health, only 3% of travellers are over the age of 65 years of age. The infant mortality rate in our community is 4 times higher than the national average. And we have about 6,000 travellers living in poor and inhumane and unsafe living conditions. We have huge unemployment rates. 84% of travellers are unemployed, compared to something like 8% within the settled community. I just want you to ponder for a moment and close your eyes for about 15 seconds. Okay? There's breaking news. Okay? A terrible tragedy has just occurred on the island. And 15,500 people have lost their lives. Okay, keep your eyes closed for a second. What do you think will be the state's response to that tragedy? The death of 15,500 people. I think myself it will be declared a national emergency. I think there will be an urgent inquiry as to how and why it happened. And I think the state would declare a couple of days of mourning. This is the scale of the tragedy that happened in our community last October when 10 travellers, including a mother-to-be, lost their lives in that terrible fire in Carrick Mines. There was no national emergency declared. There was no investigation that we are aware of. There was no declared 3 days of mourning. And while there was some outpouring of sympathy from the majority population, it was also the case that there was extreme racism and hate speech. And there was postings on Facebook such as 10 less knackers and so on. The men and women of 1916 fought and died for independence, sovereignty and for the unfettered control of their own destiny. But another core ideal that they fought for was the notion of Irishness, the right to one's identity, history and language. And this ideal is something that resonates very strongly with my community, because our identity is being denied. It's been denied by the Irish state. Our language, our history is relegated to nothing other than a footnote in the history books. Identity gives you a sense of belonging, a sense of place and a sense of pride. And when this right is denied, it constitutes a human rights violation. And this is regarded as such by international human rights law. We only heard last week at the Traveller Pride Awards that the new Minister for State at the Department of Justice, Dave Staunton, wants traveller ethnicity to be decided by the majority population. This is a regressive step and totally unacceptable to us. We would never suggest that women would have to ask men for the right to vote. We would never suggest that we would have to ask white people in America to abolish slavery, particularly in the South. Slavery was abolished by the leadership of one man, Abraham Lincoln. And that's the type of leadership we want from this Irish government, to recognise traveller ethnicity. It's time to stop the excuses, kicking for touch and for reports and inquiries. The time is now to do the right thing in this year above all years, the centenary of 1916, to recognise traveller ethnicity. The recognition of traveller ethnicity is not, as some have said, about separation, isolation. On the contrary, it's about respect, inclusion and equality. And it's about my community reaching its full potential without having to compromise its identity. My community have endured centuries of oppression and exclusion and forced assimilation. But we as a community have survived. There is resilience in our community, and there is a determination to continue the struggle to secure our basic human rights and recognition of our identity. And in this context, I am reminded of the words of the great black civil rights activist Martin Luther King on the March to Washington. And he says, "In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high level of dignity and discipline." And that's my message here to my community today. We have every right to be angry. I think our anger is justified. But we must be dignified and disciplined in our struggle for freedom from oppression, persecution, racism. And finally, I want to say, and this is a message to my young community in particular, have pride in how far we have come. Have faith in how far we can go. Thank you very much.